Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And last week we talked about how Xbox has 3 events planned for the month of August. Yeah, they have a lot of things happening throughout the rest of the month, including an indie showcase that will happen tomorrow on August 10th. But they also have a big event, it looks like closer to the end of the month, that they detailed today. So we will go over that, as well as another game coming day one to Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, it just never ends for Xbox Game Pass subscribers, and by this point, it's really almost impossible to keep up with all of the games that they release into this service. But then we also have Nintendo, and a big first-party Nintendo sequel might be on its way. So we will go over all of that as well. To start today, though, we're actually going to take a look at a new Xbox Series optimized game, and I'm actually personally really excited about this one because Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, yes, we'll be getting an optimized version on the Xbox Series X and S. We'll kind of get into all the details here in just a second, but Hellblade is actually one of my favorite games that released last generation. I firmly do believe this is one of the best single-player experiences that you can absolutely play right now. So obviously, I'm excited about Hellblade 2, but for whatever reason, if you did miss out on the first game, now is the perfect chance to jump in, because here we have this new Xbox Series optimized version, and it's sounding pretty good on paper. Now, I haven't gotten to try it out myself yet, but it does include enriched visuals, DirectX ray tracing, resolution mode, plus more. You can actually see their published chart here and what each mode runs in terms of resolution and frame rate. On the Xbox Series X, the performance mode will not have ray tracing, but it will have dynamic up to 1080p resolution and 120 frames per second. Then you have resolution mode with dynamic 4K and 60 frames per second, while enriched is ray tracing, dynamic 4K, and 30 frames per second. Then you have the Xbox Series S, which looks to be a pretty good option as well, with the performance mode being full HD at 60 frames per second. The resolution mode is a dynamic 1440p, 30 frames per second, and then enriched, yes, the Xbox Series S version does have ray tracing, full HD at 30 frames per second. So this is a nice little visual upgrade for Hellblade, and like I said before, Hellblade is an absolute fantastic game. And you know, one of the things that always stood out to me when it comes to this game is actually the visuals. I think visually it already looks great, especially with the facial animations. Ninja Theory did a phenomenal job with the facial animations in Hellblade, so I'm excited to see what this game looks like running on the Xbox Series with this optimized version. And here's the really cool thing. The Xbox Series optimized version of Hellblade will be available today. Yeah, that's right, you can go check it out right now. Now, we also need to talk about the Xenoblade franchise for Nintendo. The Nintendo Switch does have a couple of Xenoblade games, being Xenoblade Chronicles, the HD Definitive Edition, and then you also have Xenoblade 2. And these two are debatably some of the best JRPGs available on the Nintendo Switch. Now, unfortunately, we still don't have Xenoblade X on the Nintendo Switch, but right now there's a lot of speculation that Xenoblade 3 was just confirmed. So basically what's happening here is that a couple of media outlets did find an interview with Jenna Coleman, which did do some voice acting in the Xenoblades franchise, was asked about her role in Xenoblade. And she did kind of talk about how she got the role and everything, but then continued on by saying this. And I think they're going to do another. Common knowledge? Don't know. Yeah, I think they're going to do another. Not sure if I'm allowed to say that. And this has led to a lot of fans and media outlets believing that she is suggesting that Xenoblade 3 is in development. But regardless if she was suggesting anything or not, Imran Khan over on Fanboy, which, you know, he has some pretty good sources, had this to say. According to our sources here, we can indeed confirm that to be the case. Moreover, the game is nearing its final stages of development, but its release date may be held back for any number of reasons. The third Xenoblade Chronicles game in development at Monolith Soft is a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, currently the best-selling game in the series. So yeah, according to Imran Khan and his sources, Xenoblade 3 is not only in development, but it's nearing the end of its development. So based off all that, it's very possible that we might hear about Xenoblade 3 soon. I mean, it sounds like it could end up being a 2022 release, and I know there's already some big Nintendo games releasing next year, such as Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, and then you have Pokemon Legends Arceus, but yeah, if you have Xenoblade 3 as well, yeah, next year is looking really good for the Switch. And the thing about this franchise is just in general, a lot of people do consider Xenoblade to be one of the best JRPG franchises that's available right now. So this is just great overall news, but we do need to keep in mind that this is only a rumor for the time being. Even then, I'm going to go ahead and cross my fingers that this one is true, and hopefully we hear about Xenoblade 3 sooner rather than later. Let's go ahead and talk about Xbox though, because we do have a few Xbox related topics, including a big event as well as another Xbox Game Pass game. We will first kind of go over this event though, because Xbox did give some new details about their Gamescom Xbox stream. And this is actually really interesting because this is actually the third event for the month of August for Xbox. Of course, you have the Xbox Indie Showcase that takes place on August 10th. Then you have QuakeCon, which will be August 19th. And now you also have Xbox's very own Gamescom stream. And that right there is one of the reasons that this particular announcement is so interesting, because this particular event will actually be separate from the kickoff stream on August 25th. I wasn't really sure if Xbox was going to do their own Gamescom related event or not, but here you have it. This will be a legitimate Xbox-focused event on August 24th. Now, what you're probably wondering, though, is what will they actually be showing here? And they actually did detail that as well. Xbox did post this on their website. You'll get in-depth updates from some of our previously announced Xbox Game Studios titles, alongside some of our third-party partners, including some of the incredible titles coming to Xbox this holiday, upcoming releases to our monthly subscription service, Xbox Game Pass, and much more. So there you have it. This does sound like it's going to be an overall busy Xbox event. It's going to have pretty much everything there, whether it be first-party titles, third-party, or even new Xbox Game Pass titles. Kind of get back to that here in just a moment. But the one thing that fans, I think, are really going to be excited about is getting updates for some of those Xbox first-party titles. Xbox has announced quite a bit of Xbox Series exclusives over the next couple of years. I mean, you got Hellblade 2, you got Everwild, you got Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite, Perfect Dark, Fable, and I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on. There's Avowed and State of Decay 3 and just so many more. But I know Xbox fans are just craving more information about these games, and it sounds like we might get a couple updates for some of those games at this event. And while we may not necessarily know the exact titles that will get updates at this event, I think we can kind of make some predictions as to some of the games that will make an appearance here. I think with Halo Infinite, that's a game that will probably make an appearance here, considering they haven't really given an update for the campaign since back in 2020 with that infamous Craig demo. Yeah, they did show the campaign last year, and I think the gameplay looked really good, and I will stand by that. But in terms of visuals, yeah, it was a little rough around the edges, and obviously, it ultimately ended up getting a delay. Well, we really haven't gotten a big update for the campaign since then, and I think that might change here at Gamescom. So I think right away for Halo fans, this might be an event definitely worth paying attention to. Now, another game that I could definitely see being here would be Forza Horizon 5. This is another one of their big holiday releases, and it would make sense for them to show a little bit more about this game as well. Halo and Forza Horizon are obviously their two flagship titles that are releasing this holiday, and I think Gamescom would be the perfect time to show why you should buy into the Xbox Series and these games in specific. Now, besides those games appearing here, we might see an update even on Redfall. Redfall will release in summer of 2022, and we haven't really seen gameplay of that game yet, so I'm curious if maybe we get a gameplay update for Redfall. Now, this is all speculation, of course, but that's kind of the thing when it comes to Xbox right now. They just have so many games in development that it's kind of hard to make a prediction on what games will get an update here for. Let me know in the comments below on what games you want to get an update for the most when it comes to Xbox first-party games. Now, something else that they did mention here was more upcoming releases for Xbox Game Pass. So if you are an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, then you absolutely are going to want to pay attention to Gamescom, as there's a pretty good chance that we might get quite a few Xbox Game Pass related announcements. I mean, even if you look back at E3, a lot of the games that they announced there was also coming to Xbox Game Pass day one. Yeah, if you're an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, you probably left that event pretty happy. And I think we might see something similar here with Gamescom. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be the same magnitude or anything like that, but they're already teasing some Xbox Game Pass announcements here at Gamescom. Really, they just do such an amazing job with this service just from a month-to-month basis. And for that matter, they actually announced a brand new day one release again for the month of August. Yeah, it's already been a fun month for Game Pass subscribers with games like Dodgeball Academia. You have Hades coming later this month. Then you have Psychonauts 2. Cannot wait for that title. But apparently, there's another day one release coming on August 17th. Yeah, and this one is actually another Sega published title. Sega and Xbox have partnered up quite a bit for Xbox Game Pass in recent years with games like Yakuza, and now they're also bringing Humankind day one to Xbox Game Pass for PC on August 17th. Now, do keep in mind that this is Game Pass for PC, but this is actually a really interesting title, and it fits that PC crowd perfectly. This is a strategy game kind of similar to the Sid Meier's Civilization series. I have heard some pretty good things about this game so far, and there's actually plenty of gameplay videos out there on YouTube already if you do want to go check this game out. It looks very similar to the Civilization series, and it might actually even have some improvements on the Civ games. We'll kind of have to wait and see about all that, but at the very least, I think that this game does have some potential. And the fact that it will release directly into Xbox Game Pass, I mean, if you are a subscriber, you can at least go try it out yourself and see what you think. I mean, I keep saying it, but this is the exact reason that I love Xbox Game Pass so much. I just love these day one releases and getting to try these games out myself. Now, before I go, we actually need to talk about a new Nintendo Switch game that was announced, and this has been requested by fans for quite a while now, and it officially is happening. Yes, Darksiders 3 officially will be coming to the Nintendo Switch on September 30th for $40. And as an added bonus, this release will also be coming with all of the DLC that released prior. So I guess waiting here was actually really beneficial with all that extra DLC included here. And for that matter, I think the Darksiders franchise fits perfectly on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, Darksiders 1 and 2 are already available on the Switch, and now you're going to be able to play the complete trilogy on the Switch. And I think with that stylized visual graphics that it has, I think it stands out on the Switch. These are good-looking titles if you do like that stylized graphics, and even though the third one is probably the most criticized among the trilogy, it's still an overall fun game. The first two are probably a little bit more similar to something like Legend of Zelda, whereas the third one, it's definitely more focused on the action portion of the game. But if you do like fun hack and slash games, then Darksiders 3 might be something worth picking up. I think right now, though, the big question is probably how well will this game run on the Switch? While Darksiders 3 is a fun hack and slash experience, when the original did release, it did launch to some technical issues. So I'm really hoping that with the Switch launch, that's not the case. I hope that we just see overall solid performance right out of the gate. And if it does, then you're going to get a fun overall hack and slash experience. Nonetheless, I do like seeing some of these big games get ported over to the Switch, and even though you might have to wait a little while, at the very least, you are getting things like all this extra DLC included right out of the gate. And onto the poll of the day. Here recently, I've been playing quite a bit of Zelda. I actually recently replayed through Ocarina of Time, and now I'm playing Zelda Skyward Sword HD, which I know a lot of people are playing that game right now, and it kind of got me to thinking, what type of Zelda game do you prefer to play? You know, there is this divide among the community. You do have the classic 3D Zelda games with more of a focus on their dungeons. This is games like Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, you have Twilight Princess, and etc., etc. Then you have the top-down Zelda games like Link to the Past, the Oracle games, and Minish Cap. And then, of course, you have Breath of the Wild, which is kind of its own thing with this open world and just a bunch of shrines, which are kind of like miniature dungeons. So I wanted to know, what style do you all prefer? And this one is actually pretty much about what I expected, and 51% of you did vote for open world, with shrines being that Breath of the Wild style of gameplay. And the reason I kind of expected that is because Breath of the Wild has easily sold the most out of any Zelda game. I mean, Breath of the Wild has already sold over 22 million copies worldwide, which is absolutely insane. And to just kind of put that into perspective, the second best selling Zelda game is actually Twilight Princess, which is just above 8 million copies sold. So Breath of the Wild was this big breakout hit for the Zelda franchise, and for a lot of people, this was their first Zelda experience ever. So yeah, this game is extremely popular, but I do think that that's for good reason. I think it's absolutely one of the better open world games available right now. It's always just an absolute joy to explore the world. There's so many things that you can do in its world. It's got fun gameplay in terms of combat, the characters are well made, and it's just an overall really fun game. I enjoyed it myself, but at the same time, I actually do prefer the classic Zelda games and the top-down experiences. For as good of a game as Breath of the Wild is, and in many ways it is an evolution on the Zelda franchise, but at the same time it's also one of the weakest in terms of puzzle designs, and that is because it's lacking in dungeons. Yes, it has shrines, but these are like these miniature dungeon-like things, and it just doesn't hit the same way as a full-size dungeon. So here recently with games like Ocarina of Time and then Zelda Skyward Sword HD, I do find myself enjoying those games more because not only do they have more of a focus on dungeons, but they just seem like a much more focused experience. Now, like I said before, Breath of the Wild excels at certain things, but what I would like to personally see them do with Breath of the Wild 2 is kind of combine that Breath of the Wild experience with more of that focus from the classic games and have some legitimate dungeons in the sequel. I think if they do that, we could see something really special with the sequel. We'll kind of see about all that, but I do want to give a shout out to those who voted for the top-down Zelda games. I've made it no secret on this channel, but I have a soft spot for those top-down Zelda games in specific. Minish Cap is my absolute favorite. And in terms of puzzle design, because they don't have that focus on combat as much, yeah, they can have some really good puzzles in some of those top-down Zelda games. Regardless of which one you prefer though, I think that all of the different Zelda experiences are really good, to say the least. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.